So with respect to talking about individual character, what is the nature of human nature? So Krishna says it is the mind inside us that can often make us act in ways that are unproductive or even counterproductive. The mind can be our enemy. And to manage the mind, Krishna says, Abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha gruhyate. So abhyas and vairagya. Now these words can be understood in different ways. So abhyas at one level means practice, persistence. Somebody keeps doing the right thing. So vairagya means detachment, renunciation, abstinence, not doing some things. So that this persistence and abstinence can also be understood as bonds and boundaries. Now, when we have a bond with someone, we persist in doing something. Say, for example, marriage is a bond. Then, if you have a child, parent has a bond with the child. Then we take care of the child. We persist in that relationship and there is a bond. And there is a boundary. So the boundary could be from various reasons. Say, we choose that we practice spirituality, we decide I won't eat meat. That's a boundary. And when there's a boundary, we abstain from doing that thing. So abhyasa and vairagya can be understood as bonds and boundaries. So now if we consider a 4-quadrant diagram, so you can use your imagination a little bit over here. So one quadrant, the x-axis is bonds and the y-axis is boundaries. So based on that, we can have 4 categories of people. So we have somebody has bonds. So what do I mean? So basically bonds and boundaries in this context could mean that, say, if we care for our child, then that's a bond. But if our child angers us, we may yell at our child. Now, do we hit our child? So parents may say, sometimes that's required. I say, no, I never will not do that. It's a boundary. We may, in office, we may get upset with the employee. We may get upset with our boss. With our boss, we won't yell at our boss. The boss may yell at an employee. But even in the workplace, there's a certain level of action you can do. You cannot go beyond that. So boundaries refers to basically beyond something I will not go. Bonds is, in one sense, what I want to do, what I am emotionally invested, what I seek. So what do I want in life? And that is the bond. And the bond is how far will I go to get it? Now, when you say how far, it is not so much in terms of effort over here. It's more in terms of like extending one's moral boundaries, extending one's idea of what is right or wrong. So, for example, in cricket, every team wants to win the match. But then, for winning the match, what are you ready to do? So, some teams may decide that we will make the pitch in such a way that it is all in favor of us. Our bowlers, our batsmen. That's accepted. Maybe not the best, but it's accepted. But if somebody starts tampering with the ball, that's a boundary, that's not accepted. So, there are bonds and boundaries. Now, so the 4 quadrants we're discussing is the right bottom, we will call it, will go clockwise here. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. So the right bottom will be there are bonds but no boundaries. So then the left bottom will be what? Sorry? Yeah.
No bonds.
No bonds and no boundaries. That means that person is not really pursuing anything in life and they will do anything. They'll go to any length for that. So no bonds and no boundaries. And the left top will be?
No bonds.
This is bonds and this is boundaries. It's working now? Oh, okay. Oh, great. Oh, thank you. So we have bonds and we have boundaries. So here we have somebody who has bonds but no boundaries. And then we have somebody who has no bonds or no boundaries. Somebody has boundaries but no bonds. And a person who has bonds and boundaries. So let's try to understand this. Generally, when we see somebody is a good person, how do we decide somebody is a good person? We may look at what are they bonded to. That if we know, oh, this person works in this very big company. Oh, that means the person be a reasonably intelligent person, responsible person. Somebody is, say, a part of some social welfare organization. If they bonded to that, they must be a good person. Somebody is a part of a religious spiritual group. And also there is a bond. So by bond, we understand a person's character to some extent. And then boundaries also. So for example, we all get angry. But if somebody, even in anger, they don't raise their voice. No, it's a very even-tempered person. It's a good person. So we generally gauge the character of a person by their bonds and their boundaries. So now we could say, in this, the which is the best situation to be in among these four? Yes, to have bonds and to have boundaries. So now we will see, for example, Lord Ram himself. Now, when he was exiled, it was for absolutely no fault of his. He had absolutely done nothing to antagonize or upset or hurt Kaikeyi. And yet he was exiled in one moment. There's no appeal also over there. The idea of exile is actually very difficult for us to conceive. I was in another country, in Oman, a few months ago, and there one devotee told me that his friend, this person had just started becoming a devotee, and something happened, and a whole set of complications happened, and he was deported from there. So it's quite a serious thing. But he had just started practicing bhakti, and at that time he had to go, and I gave some classes over there, and that was like the last year, 3 days before he had to leave. He still somehow continued on. He was interested in bhakti. So I was describing this pastime of Lord Ram getting exiled. And then after that, this devotee came and told me, I appreciated his attitude also. He said that, I have been hearing about Ram being exiled since my childhood. And today, when I'm being deported, I'm getting some idea of how serious exile is. At least when I'm deported, I have my own country. I have my family, relatives over there. I have the place where I was born. I can go back there. For Lord Ram, everything and everyone he had lived with practically, he just had to leave. Sita and Lakshman came with him, but still, everything. And it is not that he could go home, he had to go to a forest. So it's huge. It's a huge injustice, a huge pain. And yet, if we see Lord Ram, he remained fixed because of his bond to his father. It was when Lakshman becomes very angry at the injustice. Lord Ram says that actually, as a service to my father, I was ready to ascend the throne. And now, as a service to my father, I will go to the forest. So that is, he had that bond. Now, he went to the forest. But how did he go to the forest? It was very gracefully. Sometimes in companies, if somebody suddenly fired, it's a software company or some other company where people are working in some high stakes job. And actually, once a person is fired, quite often they have the security come and stand right next to them and watch everything that they're doing. Because very times people are getting fired, they may just get so angry. They may hack the computer, they may delete some data, they may make some mess of things. So when we feel something bad has happened to us, that is the time quite often our boundaries get lowered. That is the time when we may become bitter. That is the time when we become very angry and harsh. So Lord Ram, when he was going, he could have said, I was not given the kingdom. Then Bharat will get the kingdom, but I'll make sure that Bharat gets a terrible kingdom. He said, I will incite all the citizens so that they will rebel against him. Did Ram do that? Absolutely not. His his behavior remained within boundaries. In fact, he was pacifying everyone. He was telling the citizens that now, this is my father's desire. My father's desire is my desire. If you desire to please me, then the best thing you can do is assist my father, support my father in this time of great crisis. He is in pain in this situation, and he will need your support. So he just reframed their vision. They would have seen, no, why is the king doing like this? The king is unfair. And they could have been angry with the king. But he said, no. If you want to please me, the way you can please me is by supporting him in this difficult time. So it requires great character to, first of all, to stay bounded to some cause. But sometimes power on. Bluetooth mode. Bluetooth connected.
Sorry, bro.
Sometimes so we were discussing about how Lord Ram did within bonds and boundaries. Now, generally, for most of us, when we are provoked, and life will provoke us in different ways. So we may go to different degrees at different times. So let's look at the other quadrants over here. So the greatest character, the person of the best character will be a person who always stays within bonds and who holds on to the bonds and stays within boundaries. So one way you understand the bonds and boundaries is, say, if this is our destination we are seeking. So this is the bonds. This is where we are trying to go. And boundaries means, say, while we are going there, if this is the road, then on the road, these are the boundaries. So what do the boundaries mean? Let's say if you want to get to a destination very fast, we go across the road. If we go very fast, if we go on the road. But suppose sometimes in movies you have these car chases. Where some person who's a criminal, they go across and they knock across some people who are on the pavement. There are some stalls that are there. They are just thrown down. So these things happen. Then still, but they don't care what all trouble they get cause others to get there. So now, if we consider different people, they go to different extents. Now, in the Mahabharata, sorry, the Ramayana, there are, if you consider three different characters who were good people who did something questionable. One was Kaikai, the other was Sugriv, and the other was Vali. Now, you look at them. Now, what did Kaikai do? Use her boon. Yeah, she used her boon to have Ram exiled. Let's put it this way. Put Sugriv here. Okay. So now what did Sugriv do? Did Sugriv ever do anything wrong? Sorry? Well, that was later. Basically, when the alliance was formed between the two of them, between Ram and Sugriv, the agreement was that Ram will help Sugriv gain the kingdom, and then Sugriv will help Ram to find Sita. But then the rainy season started, and 4 months they couldn't do anything. But after the 4 months got over, what happened? He forgot. So basically, okay, so let's go a little bit in background of the story. So basically, what happened is Sugriv got distracted. Now, Sugriv had been born in royalty, and he had been the right hand person, the brother and the commander and the friend of his of one. But there was some terrible misunderstanding between them, because of which Wali became his enemy. And then Wali started threatening him, trying to kill him. So eventually, Lord Ram arranged for Wali to be killed, and Sugriv got the kingdom back. Now we consider Lord Ram is in agony and separation from Sita. It's a very painful situation for him. And we may say that if, say, somebody from our family is lost, and it starts raining, oh, because it's raining, we can't search. We may say rain is keep searching. How can you stop it? But at that time, the rain was torrential, very severe rains. In fact, uh, Wali is said to be the son of Indra. So because Wali was killed, Indra got angry, it is said sometimes. And therefore, Indra caused super severe rains. And that's why nobody could just do anything. Even Krishna and Govardhan Leela, when the rains became very severe, all the Vrajavasis had to shelter in place. They're all under Govardhan. So for 4 months, they couldn't search. You know, if someone we care for is in danger and we don't even know where they are, how they are, the more we are separated from them, the more even their whereabouts are unknown to us, the more time passes, the more our anxiety increases. The more our restlessness to do something for them increases. And naturally, when the 4 months got over, Lord Ram was counting each and every moment, try to try somehow tolerate that time so that how he would. So now Ram was in great anxiety, counting every moment. And then when the time came, the rain has stopped. Now they can go and search. And since Sugriv is doing nothing, that upset Ram, that upset Lakshman even more. And when Lakshman gets upset, Lakshman can get very angry. So when Lakshman got angry, what did he do? He charged into Sugriv's palace. When he saw Sugriv, what he was doing, he, what do you think he was doing? Yes, for Sugriv, it was like after starving for years, now he had a feast. In Sugriv's situation, can you imagine that somebody has been in a remote place where there is no internet, there is no Netflix, there is nothing to enjoy. And suddenly that person comes back and now they have full broadband Wi-Fi connection. And then there's lockdown. So we have full Wi-Fi and nowhere to go. Then if we have nowhere to go, we'll go everywhere on the internet. Isn't it? So there's Netflix. It causes Netflix. People get fixed in the net. So for Sugriv, it was like that. He was a king, he had been a royalty, and he had been living in immense austerity. So when he got all the royal luxuries back, royal enjoyment back, just binged on it. He lost track of time. Now, when Lakshman came and chastised him, to his credit, he immediately pulled himself. So, for him, in one sense, he lost his sense of boundaries. He forgot what he was supposed to do. But the bond was strong. And because the bond was strong, he remembered, oh, I'm supposed to serve now. I forgot about it. So, ideally speaking, we could say if the bond is really very strong, then the bond will not be forgotten. But, okay, as soon as you forget, you do something about it. So, he fixed it immediately. So, basically, if you consider, Kaikai was not just distracted, Kaikai was misled. There's some agent who was involved over there, and that who was that? And she misled. So for Sugriv, the distraction, the time was just a few days. For Kaikai, it resulted in 14 years. Because she was misled, she demanded that boon from Dashrath. The result was that Ram went in exile for 14 years. So when we miss out on doing something, we do something wrong, we cross some boundaries, actions have consequences. And to the degree one does something wrong. Oh, in one sense, Sugri just forgot a promise that he had made. Now, Sugri forgot a promise. Kaikai misused a promise. Isn't it? So there's a significant difference that it is more of negligence with respect to Sugri, but here there was a conscious misuse or abuse. The result was much worse. So when a person does something wrong, it is basically, we could consider that when some people are judging somebody's character, we say we should not judge at all. Well, we have to judge. The key is we should not be judgmental. Judgmental means what? We arrive at a particular judgment and fix that on that person permanently and reduce that person to that. Somebody may have lied to us 10 years ago. Every time we say, we meet him, you are a liar. I lied once 10 years ago. After that, I have been truthful all the time. Why would you remind me all the time? So now, but for functioning in life, we have to decide. If we ask somebody to get something for us, and some people just forget. And now, at least some people forget, and they remember that I have forgotten. You told me to do something. What did you told me to do? I just can't remember. But some people forget, and they forget that they have forgotten also. And that is especially irritating. We expect them to, hey, what are you doing? No, when did you get this? What did you ask me to get? I don't remember. I don't even remember that you had ever told me this. So some people, when you remind them, they remember. Some people, they don't even remember after reminding. So what happens is, basically, we all, when we interact with each other, if we want to get something important, and that person is a forgetful person, we decide, maybe I can't count on this person. So in one sense, when we want to judge people, we don't want to be judgmental, but we want to judge people. Now, some people judge based only on bonds. Some people just based only on boundaries. That means, judge only on bonds means, oh, if this person, is working for this cause. No, like some people say, if this person is belonging to this party is a good party. So everybody in this party is a good person. Any political party. If somebody belonging to this particular organization, they wanted here, then they must be a good person. So we could go to one extreme and make the bonds the sole criteria. And the other is that we make the boundaries the sole criteria. If somebody, you can speak like this, if you can do like this, then you can't be a good person. And for each one of us, based on our upbringing, on our value system, certain boundaries will be negotiable and certain boundaries will be non-negotiable. So what happens is those who judge based only on bonds. So for example, Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita in 9.30 and 31 says that Apichet Suduracharo Bhajate Mamananyabha Sadhur Eva Samantavya Samyak Vyavasito Saha. So what is he saying over here? That even if my devotee does terribly wrong things, still, if that person is fixed in my devotion, we consider that person to be a good person. So here, sadhu, different acharyas are translated differently. So sometimes it's translated as saintly, sometimes it's translated as good. Like sadhu, sadhu, Puraya sadhu Krishna, well spoken. Sadhu can mean good. So Krishna emphasizes bonds more than boundaries in this particular context. But then there are contexts where boundaries are emphasized. If somebody has violated a particular bond, then that disqualifies a person. So, for example, within bhakti, the bonds are emphasized. Now, within dharma, dharma means the law and order in society. Within dharma, the boundaries need to be emphasized. So, for example, you know, some devotees, when they're driving vehicles, so they will drive very fast. You know, one time I was driving a car, one devotee was driving me, going way above the speed limit. I said, Prabhu, you are going a little too fast. Prabhu, don't worry. You are Krishna's devotee. Krishna will protect us. So I said, Prabhu, when you go above the speed limit, Krishna will use the car. So the point is, we are still functioning in the material world. And at a material level, there are certain laws. And those laws do operate. If somebody has diabetes, and they are offered, say, jellies. And say, somebody tells them, Prabhu, you got diabetes, better don't think. This is not jalebi. This is Krishna Prasad. This is transcendental. And they take 1, 2, 3, 10 jalebis. So I was talking about that if somebody has diabetes, then yes, it may be prasad, but still at that point the boundaries need to be emphasized more, isn't it? Because yes, it is prasad. Spiritually it will purify you, but materially it will devastate you, isn't it? Sometimes we have to focus on the material aspect. Somebody may say that, Prabhu, we are going to a temple, even if we go very fast. Now we are going to Vrindavan, going over the speed limit. And I say, okay, I want to go to Vrindavan, but I want to go with this body only. So if we go above the speed limit, there will be problems. So basically, there are times when bonds are to be emphasized, and there are times when boundaries are to be emphasized. So generally, in the devotional context, quite often the bonds are emphasized. But even if a devotee does something wrong, this person is a devotee, that's what is it. And true, it is important. But in one sense, we are not just trying to please Krishna. Yes, we are trying to please Krishna, we are trying to serve Krishna, we are trying to go closer to Krishna, but we are trying to do this in this world. And when we are functioning in the world functions within some boundaries. If we go beyond the boundaries, things become dysfunctional. Somebody's a great singer, but if they sing for 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, then the throat has finite capacity. Or they may get a terrible throat. So I'm doing it for Krishna. That's wonderful. The bond is there, and the boundary is also required. So I'm giving various examples of a principle of material spiritual. So dharma is generally considered material in the sense that it is material order that is conducive to spiritual. Krishna says, dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge. Okay. Maintaining order in society so that people can peacefully practice spiritual life. So bhakti, of course, is spiritual. Now, generally, for us, when we have to judge people, we need to look at bonds and we need to look at boundaries both. So sometimes somebody may overemphasize boundaries, and when this happens, they become highly moralistic. Moralistic means what? Very legalistic. You didn't do this right, you didn't do this right, you didn't do this right. And they become very nitpicking and fault finding. Every small thing that somebody doesn't do right. If somebody doesn't say on Ekadashi, they don't fast. How could you not fast? It's Ekadashi. Well, my body doesn't take it. Prabhu, you're not your body. So somebody may, when somebody focuses on the boundaries too much, they focuses on the rules way too much. And one small rule is violated, somebody may just come way too much on the case. Now, when the bonds are emphasized at that time, the intent, the intention, the emotion, the bhava, that is emphasized. Now, when is bhava important? When are the rules important? It depends. Both are important. So now, if we look at going back at this particular diagram, we have had, I've been going a lot over. I won't be able to go over all the four quadrants, but we see that Sugriv had a bond and he forgot a boundary for a short while. Now, the same happened to Kaikai for a little long. Now, if you consider Ravan, where does he fall? Quadrant two. Quadrant two. Ravan, he it's like both Ravan and Shurpanka. They had no bonds and no boundaries. Let's look at Shurpanka. Now, Shurpanka, she was just wandering around in the forest and she smelled human blood and human flesh. Where is it coming from? I haven't had a human feast for a long time. And she went searching, following her nose, literally poking her nose in other people's business. So, when she did that, she saw Ram. And Ram looked so handsome. And in one moment, her lunchbox became her love interest. Suddenly there was a change. And, and when she approached Ram, and now Ram wanted to gently let her down. Generally, in the interaction between the genders, most of the time it is the man who takes a step forward and tries to initiate a relationship. If a woman is initiating a relationship, she's actually making herself vulnerable. And for her to be rejected, it's very mortifying, it's very humiliating. So Ram wanted to gently let her down. And Ram said to her, I am already married to Sita. If you marry me, then you will have to become her maid servant. Lakshman is unaccompanied right now. He didn't say he's unmarried, unaccompanied right now. So you can be with her. And Shurpanakha immediately went her. So that itself indicates it was not love, it was lust. Okay. Now we could say love involves something more of a relationship beyond just the physical gratification. So for her, it quickly changed. And then now Lakshman understood what Ram is doing. So he said, actually, if you marry me, you will, I am serving Ram and Sita over here, and you'll have to serve both of them and you'll serve me also. So basically, they were trying to tell a polite no to. What said? Ram said no. Lakshman said, "Oh, why are they saying no? The reason is Sita. And she just pounced on Sita and tried to strangle her. That's when Ram said, those who are evil, they should not be humored. Lakshman, stop. So for her, she had no bond and she had no boundaries. Yes, it is painful when somebody wants to enter into a relationship and they are turned down. But after you're turned down, what do you do? You just attack and try to kill someone whoever you feel has threatened the relationship for you. That's where a person has no bonds and no boundaries. That makes them very dangerous. Now, Ravan had many queens, and Sita was not the first person whom he had abducted. But previously, he had abducted princesses and then he had married them. For him, when he abducted Sita, she was already married. So against her will and against dharma. So for him, the male female attraction, you call it lust, it is a universal principle. Krishna says, Dharma aviruddho bhuteshu kamos viparvashas. So Ravan's problem was not just lust, it was lust that disregarded boundaries, that didn't care for boundaries at all. So he had no bond. Okay, I have Mandodari. Even without talking with Mandodari, he promised Sita, I'll make you the chief queen. Just come with me. There's no bond, there's no boundaries. So this is actually the most dangerous. Now, when there are bonds and boundaries, that is the best. When there are bonds but no boundaries, then it depends on how far the boundaries are transgressed. How far does the person go in transgressing the boundaries? Now, if somebody has boundaries but no bonds, what does that mean? That person very strictly follows the rules. But, like, why am I following the rules? You ask somebody, okay, you're driving, where are you going? Oh, I'm following the traffic rules. Okay, good. But where are you going? No, I'm just following the traffic rules. Following the traffic rules is good. But the point of driving is not to follow the traffic rules. The point of driving is to get to a particular destination. So, in the Bhagavatam, there's the example of the Yogic Brahmanas. These were Brahmanas, they were following all the rules very diligently. But the purpose of performing sacrifices is ultimately to please the Yageshwar. And Krishna came, or Krishna sent the cowherd boys. They neglected it, they disrespected it. So what happened was their boundaries were there, but the bonds were not there at all. And then that ends up defeating the purpose. Good to follow rules, but if somebody just imposes the rule, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. Okay, what is the point of this? Now, whenever there are rules, your rules are meant to be like the boundary walls for roads. The boundary wall has to be there, but don't go this way, don't go this way. But which way should we go? That is extremely important, isn't it? So, somebody's playing cricket. Now, the point of playing cricket, everybody who's playing cricket has to follow the rules. But the point of playing cricket is not to follow the rules. The point of playing cricket is to score runs. The point of playing cricket is to exhibit one's artistic one's abilities, one's talents, and to win the match. So if somebody is simply following the rules, but they don't have any bonds, then it doesn't work at all. And that's why when rules are imposed without affection or love or respect in the relationship, then the rules start becoming very, very oppressive. People start rebelling against rules. So for us, when we are trying to understand other people or when we are trying to train our children, there has to be both bonds and boundaries. Now, sometimes some people may, their bond may get frayed, but still they function with the boundaries. Sometimes some people may violate particular boundaries, but still the bond is strong. When that happens, then it's important to know that this could just be a temporary lapse. And this will be overcome. So, in general, when the bonds are strong, the person will reorient, will return to the right track because the bond is strong. But the boundaries, if they are strong, then what will happen is the person will not go off the wrong track, will not go off. So both are there, that is the best. So, for example, when we are guiding others, now it will conclude with this one parenting. Sometimes some parents they emphasize the bonds. Some parents emphasize the boundaries. That means what is the most important thing for a child? A child should feel loved. Yes. Parents should make sure that the child always feels loved and cared. That's emphasizing the bonds. That's very important. At the same time, for a child, when it's growing up, it's very one of the most important words that a child needs to hear from the parents is no. No, you cannot do this. If a child is going in the middle of a street and playing, parents have to say no. It's like essential for the child's sake. Because children are curious, they're adventurous, and at that particular point, their intelligence is not developed. So they will explore, they will try to push the boundaries. How far can I, what all can I do? How far can I get to? If you have two kids, and one kid is eating food from their plate, and that food is over. The other kid, and they have the food in the plate, and the kid just grabs the food from the other kid's plate. And as parents, you have to say, if you want more food, I'll give you more. You don't take from your sibling's plate. What's the big deal? It's the same home. You say it's the same home. But the point is, if the child does not learn the principle of boundaries, fast forward 20 years, that child has become a young man and is at a corporate dinner. Imagine there, somebody just grabs something from somebody else's plate. So learning boundaries is important. So when through bonds, the love is emphasized. Through boundaries, the no, saying no is also a part of love. The rules are emphasized. When both of these are done together, then what happens is, then the growth happens systematically. So some people, when I'll start by speaking about the nature of human nature. So by the nature of people only, some people will focus more on bonds. That's just the way they are. Some people will just by their nature focus more on boundaries. And that's how it is. That's where the attention goes naturally. And both kinds of people are required in the world. Politically, there are people on the left, there are people on the right. So people on the right, they are more concerned about order. We have to maintain order in society. Maintaining order in society means following rules. This is a system, it has to work. People on the left are more concerned about feelings and emotions. No, you have all these rules, but these rules are making people feel left out. So what do you do about them? They also need to be included. So bonds are also important. Now, which is more important when? Depends on time and circumstances. So generally, parenting, it's a two-person business. One parent may focus more on bonds, other parent may focus more on boundaries. The mother may focus more on bonds, the father may focus more on boundaries, whichever way it is. But for the whole development of character, bonds and boundaries, both are essential. And for us to understand the character of another person, also both bonds and boundaries have to be considered. So Krishna said, Abhyasa and Vairagya. That is the way to learn to manage the mind. What that means is that we need to develop the bonds and we need to establish the boundaries. And by that, the mind, which may be wild and turbulent, will slowly but surely start coming under control. So I'll summarize what we discussed today. So Broadly, we're discussing about the topic of nature of human nature. And within that, I discussed mainly 2 points. One was this four-quadrant diagram of bonds and boundaries. That generally, when you want to understand human nature, you can understand it by looking at the bonds of a person and the boundaries. So then we discuss Ram as an example of person who had strong bonds, especially in the time of when he was exiled. He was fixed in his service to mode of service to his father, and he did not disrupt the kingdom. So that was the function of the bonds and boundaries. And bonds but no boundaries. We discussed the example of Sugriva. Then we also discussed now Kaikei. I didn't get time to go into that much detail, but Kaikei for her, she crossed a boundary a lot, but her bond was to Bharat. That's why when Bharat came back and chastised her, then she accepted, oh, what I done is wrong. So that was a topic I discussed yesterday elaborately. But there's bonds, but no boundaries. Then we discussed no bonds, no boundaries. Who was that? Ravana and Shurpanka. So I specifically mentioned about Shurpanka a little bit more. Ravana is already understood. Now, there are boundaries, but there are no bonds. What was the example of that? Yes, the yajna performing Brahmanas. That's not in the Ramayana, it is in the Bhagavatam. But the principle is the same. Then, within this point, we discuss how some people may emphasize bonds more. Now, some people may emphasize boundaries more. Now, we can say bonds are emphasized more in a spiritual context, that in Bhakti, specifically the Bhakti context. And if somebody is devoted to Krishna, just focus on that. That's important. Now, boundaries need to be emphasized more in the material context, in the context of dharma. We have to function in the world. Then the world has a particular way of functioning. And somebody not doing that way, then they can be a disruptive influence. So overall, we need to consider both bonds and boundaries. And that's how I get a holistic picture of things. And then similarly, I discuss also about parenting. So there is a parent who emphasizes more on bonds. That means showing love, making sure that the child feels loved and cared for. But there's a parent who may emphasize boundaries, where it is you have to say no. Now, ideally speaking, sometimes it's very difficult for the same person to both emphasize bonds and boundaries. So it may be one person emphasize the bond, the other person emphasize the boundaries. But overall, it is both for assessing other people's character, also as well as training others in the character. For this, we need to consider a balance of both bonds and boundaries. And this is what Krishna talks about in 635. He talks about abhyasa, that practice, that persistence will happen through bonds, and the vairagya, that will ensure that our mind doesn't go wild. That will happen through boundaries. So in our own life, in our relationships with others, we can see, what do we tend to more emphasize and how we can bring about ourselves to a better level of balance. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Are there any questions or comments? Thank you so much, first of all, for this wonderful class. You have brought up very important topics that generally we don't dwell into deeper. So, thank you so much for this deriving these concepts and explaining it so nicely. So the question I have is in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says Sarva Dharman Parityaja, and at the end he goes and says Sarva, give up all the dharma and surrender unto me. So what I understand is when he says first he says dharma stapnarthaya, to establish dharma, and then he says give up all dharma. So what I understand is uh, to establish dharma is like setting up the boundaries, and to give up all dharma is to surrender unto Krishna. That is, strengthening our bond. So for a devotee, can a time come that the bond becomes so strong that he can forget all the boundaries? Like I can give the example of Shivas Thakur. He will not go and work. He'll say that if I want something, it will come, and if it doesn't come, I'll go and jump into the well. So is it like defining all the boundaries and just focus on the bond? would like to understand from you, Prabhu. Good question. And nice analysis also. Now, this particular verse, Sarvadharman Parityaja, what it means, I have a whole class on this where six explanations are there. Different acharyas are given. But let's focus on particular point you're talking about, 1866. Now, in the Gita itself, the word dharma has six meanings, at least six meanings. So, for example, when Arjuna is asking in 2.7 dharma, Prachami tvam dharma sammudha cheta. There he is referring to the right thing to do. What is the right thing for me to do? So here dharma is more at an individual level. Then if you consider what the words you mentioned, 4 pointed dharma samsthapanarthaya, there it is an order in society. It is law and order, we can say. There are miscreant people and they have to be neutralized. So that is at a social level. Then if you go into 14.2, idam jnana upashatya mamasa dharmyamag. Here it refers to nature. They will attain my dharma. They will attain my nature. This is a completely different meaning. And they attain the spiritual nature like we have attained. So it goes on further and further. There are others also. You don't have time to go into that. But the point is that this 4.8 and 18.66 cannot be correlated because they're two different meanings of the word dharma. So it's clearly dharma is, see, law and order has to be established. Whether a person likes it or not, it has to be established in society. Now, dharma in the individual sense, it has to be chosen by a person. So somebody may not follow it. Somebody may choose not to follow dharma and they'll be punished for it. So now, in the context of the Gita, in 1866 coming to it, Sarva Dharman Parityajya Mam Ekam Sharanam Braja. In the context of the Gita itself, see, Arjuna is pulled in two different directions at the start of the Gita. One is he is come to fight, that is his Kshatriya Dharma. As a warrior, he has to fight against aggressors. But then he's being pulled in another direction by his Kula Dharma. The opponents are his relatives. And he thinks, they're not just his relatives, they're members of his dynasty. And he's a leader of that dynasty. He feels, I have a responsibility to the dynasty. I cannot cause the destruction of the dynasty. So when two duties pull us in two opposite directions, what do we do it? That's why the dharma sammoha. What is that? Prachamitam dharma sammudha chetana. Dharma sammoha he has got. So what do I do at this time? So Krishna is telling here Arjuna that yes, you have your role as a Kshatriya, you have role as a Purnandana, but all these are roles. Your fundamental identity is that you are a part of. And when different dharmas pull you in different directions and you don't know what to do, then go at the bottom. So it's like we have many roles in our life. So, for example, we may have a role based on our job. We may have a role based on our family relationship. So that means, say, I'm a software engineer. At the same time, I'm a father. So if I get a call from my kid's school, and the kid is in trouble in school, they come there immediately. We have urgent project deadline at office. Should we go? Should we not go? It depends on which role we consider more important. Do I identify myself first as a parent, first as a professional? So we have different roles which pull us in different directions. Now, Krishna says, underlying all of these is these are our Vyavaharic identities, functional identities. And then underlying all, we have a Paramarthik identity, a fundamental identity. And that is that we are souls, and as souls, we are parts of Krishna. So when Krishna is saying Arjuna Sarvadharman Parchimamekam Sharanam Raja, say, don't get confused about all this. At Kula Dharma, Kshatriya Dharma. He says, you just follow me. Say if you are working in a company, and sometimes the same employee is in two teams. No? So and both team leads want us. You do this work right, you do this work right. So you don't know what to do. Maybe say if we have access to the CEO, we go to the CEO. So, both are telling me to do this. Okay, the CEO says, do this. What about the other person? He says, Am Tvam Sarupapebhyo Mokshayishami. I'll take care of the other thing. So Krishna is saying that you do what will serve me at that particular. So that is the meaning in the context of the Gita. Now there are some commentators who actually say, now Prabhupada has not talked about it, and our tradition has not talked about it, but actually the verses 64 to 66, they are meant only for Arjuna and for devotees at his level. Because immediately after this comes 67, and 67 is Idam te na tapaskaya na bhaktaya kadachi. Don't speak this to everyone. Don't speak this to those who are not devoted, those who are not austere, those who don't have service attitude. So the idea is, why is Krishna saying this? Because this can very easily be misused. Because I'm a devotee, I can do whatever, and Krishna will take care of it. Aham tvam sarupapebhyo mokshayishami. So now those who are very pure hearted, they can, whatever they do for Krishna, actually that will be for Krishna's pleasure. But others, they can very easily misuse this. So that's why this is for very exalted devotee. Like you said, Srivas Thakur, it's true. But most of us are not at that level. So what happens is, if I'll depend on Krishna completely, and we depend on Krishna, we may hear stories about how Krishna miraculously protects his devotees. And if Krishna is not and if we are not protected, then we become resentful. Why did Krishna do this one? Does Krishna even exist? Does Krishna even care for me? Then our faith will be shaken. That's why we need to act according to our level. Once a devotee told Prabhupada, I want to serve you lifetime after lifetime. Prabhupada said, don't make me come back life after life to take your service. So the idea is that it's important to appreciate safety levels of devotion, but we cannot imitate that artificially. Okay, good question.
Thank you, Avataridesh Mellows, for nicely powering off for bringing this nice point. And just in connection to Prabhu's point, Dharma, you actually given us a nice explanation also. But perhaps if you can please give me some more light on that, like when as an individual, as me, I have different Dharma I have to follow as a husband, as a father, as a as an employee of my company. I have different Dharma I have to follow. At times I'm put in kind of difficult situations.
Is permanent stand off now? Or you kept it off? Okay.
Come on. I'm put in Bluetooth mode. One second. Bluetooth connected. So, like for example, typically, realistically also, like I'm asked to deliver some missions in my company, and at the same time, as a father or as a husband, I have some obligation as a dharma to my wife or my son. Also, something comes in the middle. So, but for me also, I have to complete the mission so that I can meet the requirement of the company. That is my dharma also. But also, I get this kind of dharmas. So, how can I actually prioritize? I mean, priorities in terms of dharma. I feel like no, I'm violating the dharma because not finishing my job. I'm coming out of my company. I'm doing my personal obligation, which I call dharma from your explanation point of view. Right. But how can I actually stay on course? That actually I have to do my dharma, that is first, and then this is second.
See, it's not easy. One aspect of intelligence, Prabhupada says, is to see things in their proper perspective. In the 10th chapter, he has explained this as a simple definition of intelligence. So see things in their proper perspective. A proper perspective means what? That some things are more important and some things are less important. And now, what is more important? What is less important? When you're asking this question, I also had one dharma is you're asking a question, I have to answer it. Now, dharma is I don't want to keep everyone waiting for a long time. Everyone is hungry. Everybody has one specialty. Let's go tomorrow as the next day. So, at all situations, it may be that different things are pulling us in different directions. Now, how do we know what is more important and less important? There are two things. There is our position and there is our disposition. There is our particular guna, our particular individual nature, and our karma, the role that we are playing. So, for example, say somebody, the doctor in emergency duty, and they are called because there's been a shootout there's been an accident, a number of people are dying, and it's a kid's birthday party at home. What should they do? If, if they have taken up the job of being in emergency medicine, they have to be there. Now, somebody doesn't want to take that, they can take some other job like being radiology or dentistry or whatever. So many emergencies are not there. So if we take up a particular role, then that means that they have to do something. So we can't just take a role and then say, I won't prioritize it. So it depends on our position. Now, along with position, there's also individual disposition. So depending on a particular person's nature, they may prioritize one, and that's okay. But the key thing is that this needs to be communicated and contingencies need to be planned. If I'm not going to be available for this, is somebody else going to be able to take care of this? So one of things happening where we prioritize one thing and neglect another thing, that's okay. But it's just that is the nature of the job. Then see, when there is frustration that is caused, frustration is caused at one level by expectations that are unmet. If expectations are unmet, then that causes frustration. But that causes a little frustration. But what causes more frustration, much, much more, is when the expectations are not even clarified. That means that, okay, what do you expect from me? And I won't be able to do this. So there's no straight answer for this. But broadly speaking, we have to consider our position and our disposition and then make a decision. So somebody may decide, at this particular point in my life, my job is very important for me. My job is also for so that I can take care of my family. But the job is important for me. Maybe there's a recession over here and I may be laid off if I don't pay attention to the job. Then one has to communicate with the family and understand. And if somebody that relatively senior position, a more secure position, then they can maybe set some boundaries for themselves. If this is a family emergency, this I need to go for this. So according to that particular position and disposition, one may have to take a decision. So in real life, there's no such thing as an absolute right or wrong. A lot depends on context. I would say there's no such thing. There are, of course, some boundaries are there. So there are, in some areas there are absolutes, but in many areas, it's not so much what is right or wrong. It is more of what is more on the right side or what is more on the wrong side, and that may vary according to individual position and disposition.
Thank you, Professor. Chaitanya Charan Prabhu ki. Sorry.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I so much appreciate how you transcended all the difficulties we had in today's programs. So many distractions, and yet you were so clear in this topic of nature, of human nature. I've never had anyone explain it so clearly to me. So thank you, Prabhu. Thank you for that, and thank you for tolerating the technical difficulties because of my faults. Prabhu, practically, so just thinking.
For me, my bond with you is strong. That's why I was able to follow the boundary also.
Thank you, brother. Um, just personally for me, you talked about parenting especially. So on that spectrum of focusing on bond to boundaries, my nature is to more focus on bond. But it occurs to me that irrespective of the person's nature, there's a minimum level of the other thing that
Of course, yeah.
has to be emphasized, the boundaries. So is that the right way of thinking about it? Probably if a person has a tendency, like my wife has a tendency to focus on the roots, but there's a minimum level of t-shirt focus.
Yeah. There's some people where was I actually? I was in Scotland, and generally in our moment, Western people don't really come to Bhakti so much. So we're going to one retreat over there, and there are a couple of Scottish Matajis who were also they're also become devotees. They're coming, and I was talking with them, and Temple President was also there. So we were talking about what introduced them to Bhakti. Amazing, both these brothers. We love rules. Now, who loves rules? I said, many people love to impose rules on others. But some people just like rules in the sense that rules bring order to their life. Rules give structure. Rules create a certain level of predictability. So some people are just by nature, they want more rules and order. Some people want more spontaneity. And that's fair enough. So generally, most people in the West, they're a little more liberal, left oriented, but they don't like too many rules. But a life without rules is a chaotic life. What am I to do? What am I not to do? Isn't it? It's nobody can live with absolutely no rules in life. Then just like this is my rule and this is your rule and you violated my rule and I get angry with you or trivial. That's some agreement. So let's say that like some people, their joy, it's not so much of imposing rules on others, but their joy comes in ensuring order. So you could say that like one of my services is writing. So in writing, there are two aspects to it. There is order and there is creativity. Now, creativity is not very orderly. It's like we have these brainstorming meetings. It's not that one idea comes after another idea in a linear way. One person may give one idea, another person completely opposite idea. So they are two almost opposite things. So creativity is more of at the phase of writing. Order is more at the phase of editing. And a good product is to have both. So some people just get joy in being creative. Just right. And they just don't like editing too much. Some people just get joy in editing. This is 20 pages. I cut it down to 10 pages. All wasted 10 pages of mine. No, those 10 pages are there. They are invisible here. They are invisible because that same message has been compressed over here. It's there. So I would say each one of us, there'll be something which we look forward to do and something which we will have to extend ourselves to. And both are there. So I think as long as we are clear powering off that this is where I'm extending myself, then we will be ready to extend ourselves, although we will not look forward to it. So according that's why individual nature matters for a lot. Did I answer your question? Thank you so much.
Sarabjit, this quadrant that we talked about, Sita Mata is nowhere in that quadrant. We bring Sita Devi from Ramayana and Draupadi from Mahabharata. Both have been wrong. So what if in Ramayana, Sita Mata would have told that I'm not a part of this exile thing. Basically, she followed the bond and boundaries. Bond possibly was not there because she was just married. It was the boundary which she gave more importance to. Now coming to Mahabharata, Draupadi was, I believe, was more wrong because there were a lot of elders involved who could have handled the situation better. So what is the perspective on this? Better, right?
Let's figure it out. Can you hear me? Yeah. So good comparison. I hadn't thought about it till now. Certainly, Draupadi was more wrong. It happened in public view with everybody being silent. Ravan actually sidelined everybody else before he abducted Sita. So actually, Draupadi was the most dishonored, and she still comes out of that whole narrative as the most honorable person. It is she who tries to remind everyone of, and ultimately, her attempts to remind everyone of dharma don't succeed. Then it is Sarvadharman Pajamami Krishna. Take shelter of Krishna, and then Krishna protects her. So we could say that she was more wrong, but Krishna's intervention also came more immediately. For Sita, she was wrong. The wronging was less. Nobody was there. Lord Ram rescued her much later, fought a war and got her back. So, in that sense, life can be unfair. You can say the bigger picture, life is fairly unfair. Right? For somebody, one thing is works at one place, but another thing is less bad at another place. Now, having said that, with respect to Sita, certainly her bond to Ram had developed. It was not that one day she got married and the next day Ram was exiled. Yes, there was a significant number of period that passed before Lord Ram was exiled. It was in those days marriages would happen relatively at a young age, and then later on they would become the prince would be coronated as the king. So in her case, the bond was there, and in fact, Ram himself told there is no need for you to come with, but she insisted on coming. So now, if she had not come, there is this whole what is it called alternative history or hypothetical this. Like this, if this had not happened, if this had not happened. In one sense, it's a good thought exercise. At another level, the whole purpose of the Ramayana is not so much to avoid adversity. The purpose of the Ramayana, the whole story of the Ramayana is every book has a driving question. And the Ramayana's driving question is what is ideal human being? Who is the person with the ideal human being? Now, of course, at one level, the answer is Ram, but it's not just Ram. Ram is surrounded by many other characters also whose character is glorious. Like sometimes in a movie, it's like a one character steals the whole movie. But sometimes it's like a whole star set is there. The hero is great, the heroine is great, the hero's friend is great, the heroine's friend is great, the villain is great. It's like a whole star cast. Ensemble is there, ensemble cast is there. So like that, in the Ramayana, every character is fascinating. So the point is adversity will come in everyone's life. And when adversity comes, how to respond to it with dignity, how to respond to it with integrity. That is the key lesson of the Ram. So everybody, when the adversity comes, Lakshman rises to challenge, Sita rises to the challenge, Ram himself rises to the challenge, Bharat rises to the challenge. So the idea is that all of them, they respond to adversity with it. So the point is not just to avoid the adversity. So that way, once we start going toward counterfactuals, we can say that Lord Ram could have refused to go to exile. Lakshman, in fact, said, he gave an excuse. He said that, we never heard that of this particular promise that the Maharaj has given. To say that if he had known this promise, she could have used it much earlier. Why does she have to do it now after all this? So, the counterfactuals are possible, but the whole point is not so much avoiding adversity, but sticking to one's integrity and one's values, even amid adversity.
Thanks.
And last question.
Yes, and then one question for me also.
Okay.
One hypothetical question.
Okay.
So probably you very nicely explained this concept of the bounds and the boundaries and the bhakti and the dharma and something related to Prabhu's question also. And as a sadhaka bhakta, many times we feel like, as you correctly said, when we are in the dharma and it's within the boundaries, it is more predictable, more orderly, and if we try to break it out, we'll be suffering because we're in this world. But as a sadhaka bhakta, eventually we have to cross over from dharma to the bhakti boundaries to more of bhakti, right? Bonds. We have to create that bond. As like Krishna is encouraging some dharma and paritita, create that bond with me. So should we? But many times what happens is because of the predictability and the so-called safety mechanism when we stay in the dharma, or taking care of our occupation and other things also apart from the bhakti, we become very comfortable. And we may hesitate to move, or we may hesitate to take onto that leap of faith what might be required to jump onto the bond side or the bhakti side. So should we just wait for Krishna to make the give that push to us, or how can we like try to come out of that comfort zone and go towards the bhakti part after spending, like I said, sadhaka bhakta.
So see, the word comfort zone has a negative connotation generally. And when you talk about the comfort zone, don't be in the comfort zone itself. But then structure, being in a structure is not necessarily a comfort zone. Sometimes within the structure, one may also be able to extend oneself. One may be able to do certain things. So, how exactly one can serve Krishna the best? It depends on time, place, circumstance. So, for example, George Harrison was phenomenally successful as a singer. And at that time, when somebody became a devotee, the idea was just to leave everything and move to the temple. And Prabhupada said, don't do that. Prabhupada said, you are a singer, Krishna has gifted you with this ability, use it in Krishna's service. Write songs about Krishna. So Prabhupada didn't consider that that particular structure he has to give it up to connect with. So at the same time, there also, like within our particular structure, we may try to connect with Krishna, but sometimes that may not work. So then one has to decide what to do. So what happened for him was that he, in all his songs, started talking about Krishna. In Madison Square Avenue, one of the biggest venues for musicians, there he was expected to perform, and there his audience had to chant Hare Krishna. And the same audience, people who were his big fans, they started throwing tomatoes and bottle cans at him. And the newspaper started saying, George Harrison was such a great talent. And he got involved in this Hare Krishna cult and he's lost now. The world has lost such a great talent. But to understand that context, you can consider, say, in the in India came to the Cricket World Cup final in the 50 overs World Cup and India lost a. Now suppose say Virat Kohli or Rohit Sharma is a devotee. And say after the match, in the interview, they asked Rohit Sharma, now, why did India lose the match? Win, loss, it's all temporary. Just chant Hare Krishna and be happy. It's the right message, but at the worst possible time, isn't it? If you're in a particular role, if your job is to be a cricketer, you can be a devotee in your personal space, but you have to be a good cricketer. So there also will be boundaries. So the point is that sometimes within, so then Prabhupada told George Harrison that you use your interests, you mix it up basically. So then he started writing the kind of songs he was writing before. And in between it, I started writing Hare Krishna, writing some spiritual themes. So then his popularity rose again and said, oh, he has come out of the clutches of this Hare Krishna cult. He's always devoted, always chanting privately, but he managed strategically over there. So first of all, being within a structure sometimes may enable us to serve more. It's not necessary that if you had just left at that time, whether you would have been able to reach so many people. We don't know that. So we don't have to have a negative attitude towards structure. Now, it is true that there's a time when the structure can be constricting. So when that time has come, that is something that has to be carefully evaluated. Like a baby bird needs the shell. Within the shell it grows. But then a time comes when that shell itself starts confining and constricting them. Then the baby bird has to break the shell. It's a painful process. So like that for us, dharma protects us. Most people need that protection. So being within a family, being within a community, being within, say, a professional circle, whatever it is, that's the dharma which protects us. And within that, we do grow. Then afterwards, one may decide to break the dharma. Generally, the test is that basically there's a difference between renunciation and frustration. Now, I was in Pune and many years ago. So one young boy came to me and he said, what is the process for joining the temple over here? Now, I'd hardly seen him any time. So he said, you really want to join the temple? You want to become a brahmachari? So, I'll be deciding by Sunday. I said, okay, what is going to happen on Sunday? So he said, I have proposed to a girl. If she says no, I will join. So, I said that inability to have a relationship is not a qualification for brahmachari. Isn't it? So basically, there are desire and there is ability. So renunciation is where one may have the ability, but one does not have the desire. Frustration is when one has the desire, but one does not have the ability. So it's almost opposite. So we have to see when we think, oh, I should turn away from this and I should move towards that. So is it that I want to break free from the shell of dharma because actually I have outgrown those desires? Or is it that being within that shell of dharma gives me some responsibilities? I don't want to do those responsibilities. So Krishna says, Sarva Sankalpa Sannyasi. It's before somebody can go to the Yoga Arudha stage. The 4th chapter talks about it. This first, he said, it doesn't say Sarva Karma Sannyasi. First, he says Sarva Sankalpa Sannyasi. Once one actually is able to give up desires, then one can actually enter into renunciation. Now, we may say we will not be pure enough to give up desires, but at least we should not be pandering to the desires. We should not be privately, secretly fueling those desires and indulging those desires. So one has to be honest. Yes, at a particular place, particular time, one may come to that level when the dharma will need to be transcended, but it shouldn't be premature.
Hare Krishna. I will go Alan. Then I will ask. It is funny question. It's Prabhuji, if somebody accuses us, all these tragedies is happened because of Lord Rama's disobedience. Because king instructed him, don't go to exile. And Rajamata also instructed, don't go to exile. If he has obeyed this Rajamata and king, because of the dimension will be different.
Good question.
How we will counter him if somebody.
Yeah. See, the scriptures, I will talk about it. I was going to mention this in tomorrow's class, but let me quickly mention this. Our Shastras, they can be understood at many different levels. Bhakti talks about multiple levels. So I have put them in 4 categories. At a literal level. At a literal level, it's a story that happened. And it's entertaining. There are a lot of plot twists in the story. And at this level, there may be movies made out of it, TV series made out of it. Then there is the ethical level. Ethical level is where, okay, this character did this, was the right thing to do, was the wrong thing to do. And so at the literal level, the primary focus is entertainment. Nice stories. At the ethical level, it's more of guidance. Guidance for decision making. No, I should act like this, I should not act like this. Say, children should obey their parents, like Ram obeyed his parents. He didn't obey according to you, look at that. But at the ethical level. Then there's the allegorical level. Allegorical level, at this level, there's more of illumination, an understanding of some universal themes. So at this level, we don't just look at Ravana as a person, we look at Ravana as a principle. Ravana represents lust. And the historical Ravana may be dead, but the allegorical Ravana is very much present in our hearts. Then there is a devotional level. At the devotional level, the primary purpose is absorption. Oh, the Lord is so wonderful and the Lord's Leelas are so sweet. I just want to relish the Leela. I don't want to analyze who is right and who is wrong. It's just the Lord's arrangement. So see, Prabhupada also talks about these different levels. For example, Prabhupada in the first chapter, overall, the purport he seems to be praising Arjuna. Arjuna is a thoughtful person. He's not just rushing in, he's thinking about his actions. But suddenly in the second chapter, Prabhupada starts saying, Arjuna is in tears. Tears are a sign of ignorance and attachment. So at ethical level, we can look at, is the person right? Is the person wrong? So with respect to sacred characters, like character like Arjuna or in the Ramayana also, our focus is not so much on who is right, but it is on what is right. So what is right means that and Arjuna Prabhupada commends Arjuna in the first chapter, criticizes Arjuna in the second chapter. What is that? In the first chapter is encouraging the virtue of thoughtfulness. And in the second chapter, Prabhupada is pointing out the problem with attachment, with ignorance. So there are different lessons that can be drawn. So that's why the focus on what is right, not who is right. Now, at the devotional level, there is no analysis. It's all the Lord's pastime. Like Prabhupada says, Arjuna's illusion was created by Krishna so that Krishna could speak the Bhagavad Gita. So now when we look at the particular Ramayana story, we have to see what level are we looking at. So this is coming to an answer to your question. See, if we want to look at it at ethical level, we can look at it at literal level, the story is what has happened. But right now we're looking at, we're definitely not looking at the literal level, but the story is already there. Just enjoy the story. Ethical level we are looking, what's the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do. So now, from the perspective, there's like Dashrath Maharaj, there was his present desire. He said, please don't go. I don't want you to go. But there was also his lasting honor. Somebody who has given his word and then they back off from the word. When some difficulty comes up, then so Lord Ram, when he did not listen to Dashrath Maharaj, it was not because he disregarded or disobeyed Dashrath Maharaj. It was that he was concerned about the lasting honor of his father. So he saw that in the emotions that were there, for him, oh, I cannot let my son go away. So Lord Ram didn't want, he wanted that in spirit and in letter, what the vow was given should be followed. Mr. Maharaj even said, if you're going to go to the forest, I'll also come to the forest. I'll take all the treasures or the wealth of Ayodhya to the forest. And we will transform the forest into Ayodhya. And Ayodhya can become a forest. And Kaikai and her son can have that. So it was more that he wanted to protect the honor of his father. So in that cultural context, maintaining the word of honor was extremely important. So now if you can go at a devotional level, with this particular analysis, then ultimately the Lord descended to free the world of demons like Ravan. So it was when he went to the forest, that's when Ravan abducted Sita. And then Lord Ram confronted him. And after confronting him, when Ravan refused to listen, that's when he was had to be killed. So we could say for a bigger purpose, Lord Ram had to go to the forest. But in that particular context also, at ethical level, Lord Ram was considering a higher factor. Say like, a child is going to college and going to stay in a hostel. And the child is now going to the airplane to go to hostel. And then at the airplane, the mother says, please don't go. No, I can't live without you. The child also says, oh, mommy, I can't live without you. I don't go. Well, the emotions may be there at that particular point. But in the both of them, see, love is sometimes seen through expressing one's emotions, or love is seen sometimes through like respecting someone's emotions and acting accordingly, and love is sometimes seen through not acting according to emotions. The child may say, "No, no, mommy, I can't go to the hostel." That is, child has great opportunity for career. The mother may also think, "No, I don't want my child to go." but should be subordinated emotion. This is good for your growth. So there is the present emotion, and there is some lasting gain also to be considered. So sometimes the present emotion has to be subordinated to the lasting gain. Thank you very much. Ramachandra Bhagwan ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Preman. Hari Hari Bo. Charan Prabhu ki jai.